Hey, what's up? It's Mike D from Sail Junky magazine, and this week we've got another interview, video podcast. This week we interviewed Paul Foer, Foer. He's got the website Forefront. Paul is a really interesting guy. He is a coach, a sailing coach. He runs a charter business on his boat. He's a captain. He's got a lot of experience, and he works with his clients to not only train them on sailing, but finding the right boat for them, kind of going through boats with people, really teaching people about seamanship and about their boats and about what their intentions are, and just helping them with sailing. Paul reached out to me through Sail Junky magazine, and a quick conversation turned into a really cool 2-hour conversation. So we decided, hey, why don't we do an interview, record an interview and get some of this down, because people might really benefit from it. And I hope you do. This is our second podcast, and I'm super excited about it. So enjoy. Well, I'm rolling, so we can probably get started if you want.
Okay.
Thanks for reaching out the way you did. It was, again, as we talked about before, it was super nice to talk to you the other night, and just to hear what you had to say. A lot of the things that the anxieties I have about what I'm doing with my boat and everything, it was nice to hear what you were saying, because I feel like my research is paying off at least a little bit. Good. So what I'd like to do is start the interview off and kind of get an introduction of you by yourself, by you. Who are you and what your background is in sailing, and kind of, I read a bit on your blog, your website, Forefront, and a little bit about your history, and that sounds pretty interesting. That you kind of, you grew up on the bay. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that? Like, how'd you get started?
Well, way back in the 1940s or 30s, when my father was a young man, his uncle was from Washington, D.C., was a Mason. And the Masonic Lodge he was in purchased an older home, a waterman's home on West River in Shadyside, and created the National Masonic Fishing and Country Club. And it's a very interesting place. Back in the 1920s and 30s, until I think 1936, to get from Washington out to the bay in Shadyside, Galesville, and the West River, it was an excursion. There were no paved roads. And So my great uncle, Frank Foer, being a Mason, came out there on weekends and summer holidays and enjoyed the rustic waterfront life. And my father would go there as a young man and learn to fish, and I guess messed around on boats as well. And then my father went in the service, went in the Navy. He was a yeoman in the Seabees, the construction battalions, the famed Seabees, and served in Hawaii. And after the war, he came back, and with my mom, they did the greatest generation thing. They won the peace and raised a family.
Right.
And many years later, as all the various Masonic members of this club passed away, the ownership of this club trickled down to a dozen or 24 families, some of whom had been affiliated with the Masons, and my family is one of those families. Now, this house now in Shadyside is on the National Register. It's known as the Captain Avery House, and it is a museum that I played an instrumental role in helping make it a museum, because it became evident that the club was no longer what it had been. Families broke down, people went and did other things. Long story short, I was very, very fortunate as a youngster, by the time I was born, to be down at this old house, at this old club on the waterfront, when things were very different. And when the Beltway opened up, things changed. But I was so fortunate to grow up there, family and friends and other close-knit families, and everybody had a boat. And my father and his business partner had a boat. And I have memories going way, way back to being out there on the bay. And I just always loved the bay, loved the water, loved the wildlife, the scenery, and really learned about boats and how to handle boats from my father and the other people that I was with. And although I have had what you might call real jobs or brilliant careers, I've come back to boating. What can I tell you? It's in my blood, so to speak. So that's how I got into it as a lifelong pursuit and as a career. But
Was it a mix of sailing and powerboats, or was it mostly sailing, or what were you doing back then?
We were bi-boatual, I guess you call it. So my father had power boats, old bay-built wooden boats, and we had some friends and some neighbors with sailboats. And I didn't really get into sailing a whole lot till I was a teenager with friends. And actually, I think the first sailboat trip I ever did was on a small open boat, not even sure what kind of boat it was. And I remember them telling me, now, if the boat capsizes, we all stand on the centerboard and we pull the boat up. And I thought, the boat's going to capsize. So I have to say, I don't think I've ever capsized a boat ever, I hope. But anyhow, so I got into sailing later in a big way and found that sailing was much more of a physical and a mental pursuit. There was so much more to do and to know and to learn. And of course, it's much more in touch with the wind and the waves and the water. But I go on stink pots, I go out with rag benders. And when I'm sailing, I hate the power boats. And when I'm power boating, I hate the sailboats. So I kind of have a hand or a foot in both camps.
That's cool. That's cool. And I mean, do you remember like when you first started with that? I mean, was it like, you said when you were a teenager, was that kind of like, were you like pining to get out there on the water, on the boat?
Well, my good friend Henry and his family, they were sailors. And they had both cruising boats, but mostly he and I would sail on a Hobie 14.
Oh, that's cool.
It was very, very cool. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't get it. I didn't know what happened. He had taken sailing lessons and I just thought, oh, this is crazy complicated. I remember once out on the West River with his family, they had a Columbia 34, with the bubble cabin, and they're racing. And he and his whole family are very, very big people. And I don't know what to do. I just grind when they say grind. And they're yelling at each other. And I'm like, is this really what it's like? And so, I mean, I have raced some. It's too much work. Racing's too much work. But I managed to really get into this and pursue it and to devote a great deal of my reality to boats, sailing and power boats. And
what kind of careers did you have?
My brilliant careers. Well, I'd worked in the boating business. I've worked in the jewelry business. I've been a book and antique dealer. I worked in a nursery and garden center. I've had some interesting government jobs with the University of Maryland Sea Grant program as a writer and editor. I was assistant to the director of the EPA Chesapeake Bay program for 2.5 years. And then for about 8 years, I was with the city of Annapolis. I ran the city's bus system. We oversaw the local transit, parking, and also taxi cab administration. I did a lot of tourism development and marketing and special events planning. And I was a columnist for the Capital newspaper in Annapolis. I wrote a weekly column for 2.5 years. And this was all after I'd gotten a master's degree in journalism. And I've done a lot of freelance writing. And I ran a little tiny bed and breakfast in Annapolis in the 1980s. And I rented out a room in my place in Eastport. And now I rent out 1 and sometimes 2 rooms in my home in Eastport, which is an easy walk to downtown Annapolis. But one way or another, I've always been involved with boating. And that's what I do now, really full-time, April through October and November. And then the rest of the year, I prepare and plan for getting things ready for the boating business, April through November.
All right. And you've got pretty strong roots in Annapolis. It sounds like you've been there for a long time.
Yeah, I guess so. I've lived in Annapolis for most of my adult life, really.
Yeah.
From the 1980s to the present. I've owned a home in Eastport for 30 some years. And I somehow knew I would always end up in Annapolis. People say, why? I say, well, the water and the boats.
Right.
I
Yeah.
get tired. Sorry.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes complete sense.
Well, when I get tired of water and boats, I go elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you reached out to me, and then we had a chance to talk for a while. I guess it was a week or so ago. In the things that I've been doing with this weird website that we've started, and Sail Junky, and the idea of writing stuff about sailing for people that want to get into it, or are into it, kind of new to it, are dreaming about it, those kind of things. Our conversation made a lot of sense, and especially, talking to you further, because it seems like, with the business that you have, basically the coaching business that you have for people with sailing, you've got a lot of insight there for, I think there's a lot of people that say, I want to get into sailing, but they don't know what that means, right? It's a dream. And then, and I'm not about telling people, be careful what you're getting into. I mean, I'm like, follow your dreams, but follow wide open, right? Eyes wide open. So, I'm definitely excited to talk to you about some of the things there with your experiences, the people you work with, and I read in your blog, one article I read on your blog, which is really well done, about when is a good time to buy a boat. And in that article, you really talked pretty strongly about the investment. The one investment you can really make when you're buying a boat is in safety and training, right? And really learning what to do so you're not hurting yourself. Follow your dream, do your dream, but don't be stupid about it, right? And so I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, and kind of stories that you have in terms of the people you work with, or the people that you haven't worked with that you know about, and some of the pitfalls that people need to watch out for, and honestly, the idea of coaching really resonates with me. I own an educational technology company. I think education and coaching is key on, if anything, if you want to be successful.
Sure.
What do you think about that?
You're right on. Absolutely. I mean, shameless, crass commercial plug. Hire me.
Yeah.
If you want to do it right, hire me. Let's put it in let's give you an analogy. Imagine the computer I'm using now and the computer you're using now. We hadn't been using computers every day for the last 10, 15, 20 years. So as computers developed, we'd learn a little bit. Now, everybody's got a computer, whether we're a computer nerd or not, okay? Imagine, though, you've never seen a computer and one was plopped down in front of you. Mm-hmm. And somebody said, here you go, here's your computer. Where do you start? Now, every single one of us in the United States, from like a day or two after we were born in the hospital, we had a ride in the car.
Right.
So we're used to cars. So by the time you get to be 18 and you get a license to drive a car, you've already been in cars thousands of times. You also know that pretty much every car is the same thing, pretty much. You also know that everybody out there gets a license. And you also know by the time you're 10, 11, 12, what a stop sign is, what a red light is, what a dotted line is, what a solid line is. You know where to go. Now, with the boat, imagine you've never been on a boat before and one's plopped down in front of you. Well, no matter how old you are, you've already known more about cars your whole life than about boats. Now, what's the most dangerous thing in a car? Crashing into something at high speed. What's the most dangerous thing about a boat? The most dangerous thing about a boat, no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter your conditions, no matter what boat you're on, the most dangerous thing on a boat is slipping, tripping, falling, hitting your head. You're either going to fall into the water, which can be deadly, or you're going to fall onto something in the boat, which could be deadly. So a lot of people feel that it's pretty easy to get into boating.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I have to spend to learn money how to do it? When I first learned how to snow ski, I was 15. I rented real short skis. I said, I don't need lessons. I got on the chairlift, almost knocked off. When the chairlift got up to the top of the mountain, I just stood there. The chairlift knocked me down. Then when I sailed, I skied down the mountain. I fell and I broke my wrist.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, no, I need to take lessons for it.
Yeah.
You know, with a boat, there are so many, many, many things that can go right. And there's so many, many things that can go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I have certainly developed my own ideas, my own way of teaching, my own philosophy about it. But I'll conclude with these two things. Otto von Bismarck said, only a fool learns from experience. The wise learn from the experience of others. So if you were to call me up and say, hey, I need help learning how to operate my boat, the first thing I'd say is, good for you, you're very wise.
Yeah, yeah.
So Oscar Wilde said something to the effect of, yeah, experience is a great teacher, but the problem is when you learn that way, you always have to take the test first.
Yeah.
And so what I try to impress upon my students, my clients, is that, you know, learning to sail is not that big a deal. It's simple manipulation, like they taught us in driver's education. There's a pyramid, you know, at the bottom of the pyramid, it is simple manipulation. And at the top of the pyramid is collision-free driving. So they would say, well, we're not teaching safe driving. We're teaching collision-free driving. It's like, okay, I guess I get the difference. Right. Anybody with any reasonable coordination, any reasonable sense or abilities can learn basic manipulation of a sailboat in a day or two or three. Learn to sail, ASA 101.
Right.
But becoming a sailor, becoming a boater, becoming a mariner, becoming a qualified seaman is years and years and years. And the great thing about sailing, not power boating quite as much, but certainly with sailing, is there's always a new place to go. There's always a new thing to learn. Mm-hmm. There's always a new skill to improve. And so sailing is a lifelong pursuit. It brings great joy and pleasure. Now, you buy a boat, you pour money into the boat, unless you're very fortunate, you will never get that money back.
Yeah.
So as you said, the only real investment is to learn how to do it right so you can enjoy your boat.
One sec, Paul. I got to shut this down.
Okay.
There we go. I apologize. The only real investment.
So there, I'm done. Enjoy your boat safely and comfortably. Why? Learn how to do it from someone who has been through it before.
Yeah, but that's, you know, it's interesting to hear because a lot of people, especially, you know, I've been hanging around with kind of like, you know, beginner people that want to get into it, and people that are got a boat but they're learning. You know, I can get on forums like on Facebook, like All Things Sailing or something like that, and ask a question. and just get beat up for asking a question. It's like, well, if you have to ask, you shouldn't even be on a boat and blah, 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 and it's like, that's bullshit at some levels, right? Because, you know, there's people with a drive to sail, and we could do it, right? We can get out there, like myself. I took, and I want to talk to you about this because I took courses at Annapolis Sailing School. I know you used to teach there.
Everyone did
Yeah.
decades ago.
So, but you're right. You get on a rainbow and you get some basics out there and you think, now I know how to sail, right? And then you can get out there on like the 37-foot Beneteau and you realize, okay, this is another animal altogether. Some aspects easier, with the roller furling on or the in-mast furling and all that. But still, there's so much to it, right? Anchoring and keeping everything together in your head while you're getting out of the channel and out in the bay and who's got the right of way and all that stuff starts hitting you at the same time. So it's that experience. I feel like there's this proper thing about taking lessons and getting lessons, right? ASA 101, 103, then getting out there and kind of doing it on good days, calm days, and then getting more coaching, and then getting back out there and doing it, and then getting more coaching and working your way up there. It's not like, a lot of people that I've talked to, when they start asking questions, I want to get a boat, and they start asking questions, and it seems like you've got to know it all before you get out there. And that's crap, it's crap. So, and I think that's what's super intriguing about what you do, because you work with clients and some of your clients, I understand, they have their own boats and you're working with them on their boats, or you're bringing people on your boat. So, I mean, it's possible, right? To be able to kind of find that seamanship that you talk about takes years. It's not like something we got to sit there and cram in lessons before we're competent to head out to St. Michael's and back,
Let's suppose that you come to me and and I were to provide you, say, 3 days of training. And let's suppose it cost you $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? What I can tell you is that's going to be like the best $2,000 you've ever spent. Because whether your boat costs $30,000 or $300,000 or $3 million, without some intensive training and coaching and skill building, it will take you a long time to really get out of it what you should. So in order to make the boat pay, just in a strict financial sense, two things have to happen. One, you want to use the boat as much as possible, because then the price per day goes way, way down.
Right.
Because it's a minimum amount of money just to have the boat sit. And the other is your enjoyment factor for that day goes up and up and up. And so whether like I said, you spend $30,000 or $300,000, one of the things that every boater has to think about is basic financial cost. What's involved there? And I've had so many people tell me stories like, I got lost, I ran aground, I got anchor road caught in my prop, it busted up the prop. Something terrible happens. And I'm like, well, did you survive? Oh yeah, but it was scary and it was dangerous and all that. And how much did it cost you? Oh, well, first we had to get this, and then we had to get the tow, and then we had to fix it. And I'm like, I'm sorry that happened. I can't guarantee you, I'd be lying if I said to you, you'll never get into any kind of trouble. But
Right.
Do you want to raise that chance of getting into trouble or drop that chance? And then when you get into it, saying, well, you're taking your husband and your children out, or you're taking out your wife, when I was working for a little while at the Naval Academy Sailing Squadron, John Bonds was the Commodore of the Navy Sailing Squadron, I think or Director of Navy Sailing. And at the Safety at Sea seminar one year, I remember him saying very clearly, the ocean is not inherently dangerous. because the safety at sea seminar is about going to the oceans. It's the safety, the sailing in the ocean is not inherently dangerous, but woe to the unprepared. If you want to be safe going to sea, you must prepare, prepare, prepare. Now, here's a question for you. Where is it more dangerous to go sailing? Is it more dangerous to sail to Bermuda or to sail down the bay to Portsmouth or Norfolk?
I mean, I guess it depends, right? Crossing the Gulf Stream, that kind of thing. But I'm sure I can get myself into trouble everywhere. So especially in the bay, I know it. But so you tell me.
Well, what are the hazards in the ocean? I joke with people. I says, I've sailed across the open ocean many, many times. I said I was never more than a few miles from land. It was just straight down.
Right.
Now, how far are you from land when you're sailing down the Chesapeake Bay?
Not that far.
So where are there more actual hazards
Yeah.
to you? Where are you more likely to encounter a reef, a shoal,
lee shore? Yep.
a buoy,
Yep.
another boat? You're on the Chesapeake Bay. So you take basic commercial sailing school lessons, and you're going to learn, okay, now this is the lead, this is the leech, this is the luff, this is the foot, this is the masthead, this is the jib sheet. Wow. Okay, I got it all. You crammed me full of figures and this and that and that and this. And I can tell you, and perhaps you'll agree as a professional educator, that just like learning to play a musical instrument, if they have you play chopsticks over and over and over again, instead of letting you play what you want, you might not develop a real appreciation for what it is that you're doing. It's the same with any kind of teaching. When I get into teaching, it's all about one thing when you're sailing, okay? It's the wind, it's the wind, it's the wind.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to take an ASA class, and I'm one of the first ASA certified instructors in the country back in 1983, when ASA was a tiny little organization, I was trained to teach advanced coastal cruising. Where at the sailing schools do they focus on wind? Now, they may tell you, well, you look up at the telltale, or you lick your fingers,
Yep.
But wind, it's all about the wind. And the thing is, you can't see the wind.
Yeah.
You can only feel it. You can sense it by seeing its effect, but it's all about the wind. And so instead of just talking about all the techniques and the points of sail and the this and the that, I have my own techniques, just like I have my own techniques for teaching person overboard drills, which, I don't know if you want to get me all into that now, or if I'm veering off.
No, you're good. And I know I skimmed you on your blog. You also have some stuff you wrote about that, which is pretty interesting. I mean, the person
overboard drills.
Yeah, you got I think a 3-part series on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that you can go out and get a boat and just learn to sail.
Sure.
You can. And these people who say, I did it. I had a 12-foot rowboat. I put up a bed sheet and I sailed across the ocean when I was 12.
Yeah.
You can do it. I guess you can. I guess you can. I guess you can also jump out of an airplane without learning how to do it. And maybe you'll land okay, presuming you have a parachute. It's pretty easy to jump out of an airplane with the parachute. Mm-hmm. Doing it a second time is really difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. But, nobody in their right mind would think of going parachuting without a lot of lessons. Nobody, and there are people that are afraid to cook unless they take lessons in how to cook. But the world is full of people who think, yeah, I can sail anywhere I want. I can hop on a boat and go, and it's easy. It's all a matter of pushing buttons. And you and I could probably have a private discussion about this over beers and really figure whether one can, one should. And if you're a reasonably smart person and you're reasonably well coordinated and in good physical shape and you're a good swimmer and you don't mind screwing up, yeah, you might be able to do it. You might be able to do it okay. It really depends. What do you want to get out of it? How far do you want to go? If you want to fly a single engine airplane in this country, you've got to take lessons from someone who is licensed by the federal government to teach. You've got to keep a logbook. You've got to go through all these steps. You've got to get a certain number of hours, and then you've got to solo, and then you're single engine rated. Then you can get instrument rated. Then you can get nighttime flying and VOR flying and all this. But anybody and their grandmother can go out now and pretty much get any boat they want, turn the key and go. And it's one of the reasons why people like yourself are out there being safe and careful and paying attention. And your biggest fear now becomes getting run down by some maniac who's either not paying attention or doesn't understand about the rules of the road.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think the other thing too that if I wanted to get out there and do it, I'm fairly confident in my abilities to get out there and do it. But I'm also fairly confident that it's going to be a hard learning curve, that I'm going to learn hard lessons that I don't necessarily have to learn them the hard way. I took some coaching at the Annapolis Sailing School. I went out with John out of the Annapolis Sailing School and just did some days where he just shadowed me. I just take the boat out, anchor it, take it around, and he was there to let me know, hey, you might want to try it this way because you'll find it easier. And those nuggets of the coaching that I'm able to get with that, I was like, man, that would have taken me a long time to figure out, a lot of heartache to figure out. So I feel like, the value in the ability to is not just safe and being safe on the water, but it's also, why learn it the hard way? Work with somebody that knows what to do, get it the easy way, because there are a couple things happen. One, you will be, especially when it comes to safety, you'll be safer. But the other side of it is you can start to chip off anxieties you have, right? If you start to get things, okay, not overconfidence, but confidence. I got this part. I understand the process I need to do with how much, chain I got to put out for anchor, and how I make sure I'm not dragging, or, something you and I have talked about in the past. And a lot of people, especially new boaters, like docking, what a anxiety riddled thing that is, especially, for like me, single handing. But again, it's like reaching out and saying, well, I know there's tips, I know there's techniques, I know there's things to think about that I want to learn about without crashing my boat into the dock. Somebody can say, yeah, but if you tried this line or did this kind of thing, you might save yourself a whole lot of heartache. And I think that's one of the big, beautiful things about getting coaching that I'm looking for, is one, easier path to that knowledge base, but two, lowering my anxiety, right? Because until I know it, until I've worked it out, until I bang my head against the wall, I'm afraid of it, until I've worked it out.
What I try to instill in my students, my clients, the people I'm consulting with, whether they're buying a boat, they bought a boat, they're thinking about it, they're upgrading, is I really try to figure out who they are, what's their skill set, what do they want to do, what makes sense. And I try to advise them to do it as easily, as smoothly, as efficiently, and as budget conscious, in as budget conscious way as they can be. There's many, many ways to get into sailing and to get into boating. But I can guarantee you this, you are much, much more likely to get in trouble, to cost yourself money, to cause pain and grief, and who knows what other human tragedies may occur if you don't learn in advance how to behave on a boat, how to be on a boat. And it's not just a matter of what line to pull when. It's about situational awareness and trying to be as comfortable as you can while dealing with the things on you that you can control and the things around you that you can't control. And so that's what I try to impart based on the many, many, many thousands and thousands of miles and many thousands of days and really on many hundreds of different boats that I've been on.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you, I think a lot of people like me have a dream, like, big trips,
Sure.
getting out blue water, that kind of thing. But it's like this idea, like, the bay's one thing. But I hear you too, that, the bay's not the safest spot too, technically, to be going. But, to think about doing a trip, like my dream to head to Bermuda, to the Azores and Europe and Africa, Canaries, back over, that kind of thing. I mean, my dream tells me it's doable, right?
Of course
I
it is.
know that the pragmatic part of me says, well, my kids are, when I got, 8 years, my kids are out of school, I'm going to train, I'm going to get ready and train. And I think, it's, some of my friends have said, you're nuts. What are you going to do? You're out in the middle of the ocean. You're nuts. But
no, you're safer there than you are in many, many places. That go back to the car analogy, right? Did you drive on the highway today?
Yes.
You did? What highway were you on? 270?
70, yeah.
How fast were you going?
85.
Oh, okay. How far away were you from other vehicles also going that fast?
A couple car lengths, good.
And how far away were you from immovable objects like the guardrail, the Jersey barrier?
A couple car lengths.
We do that each day by the millions and millions and hundreds of millions. And we know 40 to 50,000 people a year die in crashes in the road. When was the last time someone said to you, Mike, you're crazy for driving on the highway?
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, point well taken.
So, go back to Kurt Russell. And anything's going to happen. It's going to happen out there. So you're not crazy. And in fact, you could possibly survive with very, very little experience if you're going on a long ocean trip. But let's talk about for a minute sailing on our beloved Chesapeake Bay. The most dangerous situations I've been in on boats were on the lakes, bays, sounds, and rivers of the East Coast. Oh my God, coming into New York Harbor. Just, it's unbelievable what it's like coming into New York Harbor. As soon as one ship passes you, another one's coming over the horizon. They're all moving. They're all in lanes. They're all being controlled by the vessel traffic system. Going into the industrial canal and crossing the Big Crescent, the Big Easy in New Orleans. Oh my God, the way they had me regulated in a 40-foot catamaran. And they want to know how many people are on board, how many radios you have, what channels do you have, what are your markings. And they tell you exactly when you can enter the river and where you're going to go and exactly when you can cross, and you've got to check in with them. The minute you're out in the ocean, it's just like, looks safe to me.
Yeah.
Now, if you get into trouble with the ship in the ocean, it's the same thing as getting into trouble with the ship in the Mississippi River or in Baltimore Harbor. It's just that help is a lot closer.
Right.
So if you're reasonably prudent with reasonable amount of training and preparation, even the best laid plans, people can get into trouble. Yes. So the goal is not to figure out how to get out of trouble. The goal is making sure you don't get into trouble. And if you've been out on the water as much as I have, you have both almost gotten into trouble a few times and both seen other people do some of the dumbest things you can ever imagine. And you just shake your head and wonder, what are they doing out here?
Yeah.
So, let's stay safe and have fun.
Yeah, the videos abound on YouTube, and I watched one recently. It's 4 or 5 people. I think about 5 people. They were on the Med somewhere, and they had chartered looked like I don't know, maybe a 40-something foot Beneteau or something like that, and the winds just started cranking on. I mean, it was interesting. It's like, I've heard this analogy before. It's sailing can be like lots of moments of calm with these sheer moments, right, where everything just kind of happens.
Just like flying.
Yeah. And and I could sit there and think, oh my God, they were struggling with they couldn't get their head sail furled up, and the winds were cranking, and it was, finally it ripped the sail off, and their boat was all the way, almost over. But it's like, the thing you talk about is that idea of situational awareness, but also, if things start going wrong, then it's not panicking, right? And actually having kind of a calmer demeanor to say, okay, what do I got to do, and how do I triage what I need to do here? I think, for new people getting into sailing, it's a constant, or maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just an anxious guy, but it's a constant thing like, okay, I want to really hedge myself to make sure that if stuff goes wrong, I'm prepared, and some of the inner dialogue goes on like, but you're not gonna, you need to experience that, to know what to do. But I think, again, back to the coaching, it's like, if I can understand the systems of the boat, if I can understand the general workings of how things, and then with coaching, understand, like, I was talking to a friend of mine who sails, and he's like, know by heart every through hole you have, and understand those, because, keep water out of the boat. That's a good thing, right? And then work yourself from there. Keep fire off the boat, those types of things. But again, I think the coaching and experience on the water with someone, and especially on my boat, will just be able to up-level me each time, I think, a little bit more. One thing that's super interesting, when we talked last time on the phone, you also mentioned something, and I've already bought my boat, but having done so much research into boats, you can be a little bit, I didn't really have somebody guiding me. I have some friends who know a little bit about boats, but you had mentioned that something that I thought would be of an extreme value for people that are thinking about getting a boat, because there's, everybody's on Yacht World and finding, oh, it's beautiful, this, beautiful that. But one thing I came to kind of realize with different boats is, what are you going to be doing? Because the boat, it might be a beautiful wide berth, wide berth inside it, have kitchen, big, lots of room, big fat stern on it, but will that be suitable for what you want to do with it? Or, a long keel, a full keel boat, is that really what you need? Or are you looking for day sailing around Annapolis with cocktails at the dock, And so you do that for people too, right? You kind of, it's not surveying a boat, but it's really kind of looking at the boat and helping people fit a boat to what they want to achieve.
Right. I offer a wide range of services. That's part buyer's broker, part surveyor, part troubleshooter, part cruise and safety planner, and part a reluctant marriage counselor in some cases, when it's a couples, when it's a husband and wife team getting into it. I do not call myself a surveyor. Anybody can hang out a shingle and say I'm a marine surveyor, but to do it properly, you want certification from one of the two major certification outfits, NAMS and SAMS, I believe, National Association of Marine Surveyor and Society of Marine Surveyors, whatever.
Okay.
I do a lot of services related to surveying with people. But let me tell you very quickly what a surveyor does in general for a pre-purchase survey. They take a snapshot of the boat and detail that photograph, what they're seeing, what they notice. They capture a lot of information about that boat at that place in that time. And essentially, and I don't mean to belittle the profession, they're just encapsulate it. They're going to tell you whether it's a good risk to buy. Is the boat going to sink or blow up? I move away from that a good bit and work with the client in a very personal way that surveyors don't want to do. Surveyor doesn't want to advise you to buy it or not that much. They don't want to tell you whether this is good or bad kind of boat. They want to tell you that this is done properly, this is in good shape, or this is failing, or this needs to be replaced, or what have you, and that's fine. I'm more like, okay, Mike, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do? What's your background? Are you mechanically inclined? Who are you going to sail with? Are you going to go for 2-3 days at a time? Or do you want to do a 10-day trip? Are you planning to keep the boat 5 or 10 years and sail to Tahiti? You know, what are your needs? And are you a real luxurious kind of guy, or is your wife or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, do they require electric hair irons and microwaves, you know, all this type of stuff to help you figure out, yeah, this is right for you, or it might be right for you if you do this. Now, if you've already bought a boat and you bring me aboard to help you learn as much as you can about the boat, I want to go through, like you said, the seacocks, the batteries, the bilge pumps. I want to go over with you what I call the yellow lights, the green lights, and the red lights.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the green lights are like, hey, this is great. Oh, I like this. This is terrific. And by the way, if you have $10,000 laying around one day and you don't know what to do with it, buy a bow thruster, buy an electric windlass,
Mm-hmm.
buy an upgraded refrigeration system, buy the fanciest electronics you might want. Okay, the yellow lights are more like, yeah, this is okay. I keep an eye on it. Be careful about this. You may want to replace this in the next season or two, but it's okay. And the red lights, which are actually quite rare, are that's it. I'm getting off the boat now, unless you.
Yeah.
You know, like your batteries are leaking, and your bonding system is totally corroded, and the breaker box is corroded, or the stuffing box is dripping like crazy and I can't tighten it, or your bilge pump isn't operating, or you know, your engine's leaking oil all over the place, or all your sheets and halyards are frayed to bits. I've said this in other interviews before. You wouldn't believe how many clients call me up and they'll say something like, well, I never owned a boat before, but I just bought a such and such on Craigslist, and I want a little help sailing it down this way. And oh, and by the way, it's in great shape, and I got a great deal on it. Go, yeah, okay, well, we'll see about that. I've seen a lot of people really, really get into things that are way over their heads, way over their budgets. And generally, they don't want to spend any money to hire me either.
Right.
They're, you know, sailors are notoriously, shall I say, what's the word, impecunious, thrifty.
Cheap.
And so a boat is a losing proposition financially.
Yeah.
Financially. But if you're talking about economically and cost benefit and rent, or as the economists say, utility or rent, a boat can be a wonderful, wonderful thing. But again, it goes back to what I said earlier. You've got to learn to use it safely and comfortably and enjoyably, and that encourages you to use it more.
Yeah.
And if a boat costs $10,000 a year just to sit and be insured, and you go out 10 days, that's $1,000 a day.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you go out 20 days, it's $500 a day, and so on and so on and so on. And so I advise some clients, don't buy a boat at this point. I don't think you're ready for it. I don't think you're going to want to spend the time and the money. Charter boats, rent boats, join a club, and then decide if it's really what you want to get into. But you've got to balance out that aesthetic, emotional, romantic thing, which is what leads you, I think, to want to go on a boat, as well it should.
Yeah.
That you want to balance that with the nuts and bolts and the economic aspects and really figure out, well, how do I do it?
You've talked to me about your boat before, and I read a little bit about it, but tell me about what your boat and what you've got going on.
Well, back in the 1980s, when I was managing a boat charter fleet, one of the boats we had was a Morgan 38. It's a Ted Brewer design. Ted Brewer also designed the Whitby 42, and I sailed that a number of times also. And so when I started to really look seriously for the boat that I wanted to be able to run tours on, and then eventually to live aboard and cruise, I chose a Morgan 38. And I looked at a few boats, and then I looked at a couple Morgan 38s in particular. And this particular boat, which by the way, I call non-sea quitter, not non sequitur, but the non-sea quitter, is a 1980 boat. And I got on board it in like February or March of 2015, I think. And on board, someone was living on board, and all the port lights were covered up. And there were cats living in this boat.
Ooh.
And I'm allergic to cats. It was kind of like Indiana Jones going, oh, snakes. Why does it like that? Snakes? I'm going, cats. But the boat was so structurally sound, so well built, that basically I made a ridiculously low offer on it, and it was accepted. And then I thought, well, now what did I get into? So I really spent a good bit of my savings and the last 5 or 6 years restoring this boat, which is it's in a class of its own. Well, there's really only a few other boats, I think, that have cruising boats that have withstood the test of time. That the Morgan 38 is so well built, so well designed, so attractive, and to me, just damn practical, that it met all my needs, all my concerns. And I worked like crazy and spent like crazy to fix up and restore the boat.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't think boats of today are anywhere near as well built. They might have new and different and better materials. I don't think they're laid up as heavily. I don't think they're as structurally sound. It's a simple, straightforward boat that to me has a big cockpit and is easy to walk around.
Mm-hmm.
Easy to get around the deck, and a nice, big, roomy, comfortable cockpit are the most important factors to me. And so what I do now on my boat, and for the last 4 years, is I run tours out of Galesville and now out of Annapolis, for people who just want to have a fun day on the water, or they want to get into sailing, or they're in Annapolis and they want something to do. They come out with me. I generally do 2.5-hour sails, 3 a day, all spring, summer, and fall.
That's cool.
And, I can tell you that I wouldn't say it gets boring. It gets to be pretty routine, but every trip is different because the weather's always different.
Mm-hmm.
The boats out there are different. The guests are always different. And yeah, I'm living a dream that a lot of people, they get on the boat and they smile and they relax. And they go, wow, this is amazing. And I go, well, what's amazing? They go, you actually get paid for this?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, what's more amazing is how cheaply you're able to do it.
Yeah. But I
what I
think,
mean?
yeah, but I think, I've been talking to some friends and my wife about this a lot. It's, if you can, obviously you have a passion for sailing and for boats and for your boat and for teaching people to sail and taking people sailing. So you get to do what you're passionate about. I mean, that's huge, to be able to, it's like my grandfather used to say, do what you love and you never work a day.
That's right.
So I'll put a link to your website. And I think people should know too that on your website there's that blog link because your articles are really good. You being a journalist, that makes a lot of sense. And then to your Facebook, and then how people can find you for chartering and or consulting, because I think
Well, thank you. Why don't we stay on for a minute now
Mhm.
and talk privately?
So that's this week's interview. I really want to thank Paul Foer for sitting down with me for this. If you've got a need for any coaching or consulting for your sailing adventures, give Paul a call. You can see his website will be available in the links below in the article here. Also, if you like this content and you feel like you want to say thanks, we're not taking any sponsorship right now, but if you have a couple bucks to throw around, head over to oceanresearchproject.org. That's Matt Rutherford's organization, and they're doing some amazing stuff with science via sailboats. And you can check out everything that they're doing over at oceanresearchproject.org, and they've got a quick link where you can donate there. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to doing another one of these soon.